This conference will now be recorded.
Call the meeting to order. Approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approve the minutes from February 7th meeting.
We adjusted the attendance name folder.
Miranda, you adjusted that already?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 7th.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from February 7th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approve the accounts payable.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the accounts payable. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. We're going to go into unfinished business. We're going to go to the campground discussion, public comment portion of the meeting. Just want to set some, there's a lot of people, I think, that may want to say something, so we kind of, I'm just going to read what I put down here. We had a sign-up sheet, and we're going to limit speakers to 3 minutes each, not because we want to limit discussion, but because we want to be able to hear from everyone who wishes to speak. After your 3 minutes, the board may or may not ask questions of you. This time will be outside your 3 minutes. Please don't come up and say something that someone else has already, that we've already discussed. If anyone feels the need to talk over, interrupt, or talk out of turn, you'll be warned once, then the next time it happens, you'll be asked to leave. Again, we want to hear as many thoughts as we can. Too many people talking at the same time would be counterproductive. So, I guess we'll open it up to if somebody wants to come up. Okay.
I'd like to make a comment.
We'd like you to come up to this chair up here
Oh, okay.
and sit. There's a speaker there and everything.
Just a statement that I want to read.
Yep.
My name is Steve Arndt, and I'm a resident of town, Zumbrona. And I live next to the campground where the expansion is going to take place. So it appears that all the property owners living next to where the proposed expanded campsites are to be placed are unified in their opposition to this expansion. These are the people that will be most affected by this addition of permanent/seasonal RV campsites. So it makes sense that you would hear primarily from us. And this opposition should be a bit concerning to you. I'm not sure I'm understanding what the city/park board is gaining with the expansion of permanent/seasonal RV campsites within the Covered Bridge Park. I don't believe the simple statement that the Covered Bridge Park has always been a campground, so we can do this expansion is an adequate reason to do it. What does allowing 13 permanent seasonal RV campers, probably non-residents, bring to the city of Zumbrona? Is it going to bring a financial influx of dollars to the town of Zumbrona? How so? I don't believe people go camping to spend money in town. I haven't seen the financial side of this discussion, and it would be interesting to see the reasoning. Might it be better to plant more trees or butterfly-friendly plants to enhance the natural beauty of the park? I am not opposed to camping in the park. There is camping available there today. I just don't think expanding the park into a larger RV park is the answer. That's my view. Do you have any questions?
I do not.
Your main opinion is that the aesthetic of an RV in front of your viewpoint, is that kind of bothering you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think when I walk through the park, I want to walk through the park the way it is. I don't want to walk around a bunch of RV campers. I just think it takes away from the green space, takes away from the wildlife. I just think it's better the way it is right now. We do allow camping, but making a whole row of RV campers, and then you have to walk around that, I just think that's not the answer to this.
Would it be okay if I add just one thing right here? So I kind of wanted a visual of where these campers were going to be, something, where I could, okay, how far are the campers proposed to be away from the trail? And I had said in my response emails to those of you who emailed me that it looked on the GIS about 50 feet from the trail, about 135 feet from the closest property line. Mike went out there this morning and did some more measuring, and we think it might be closer to 70 feet to the trail, give or take. And so we did a little measurement out here. So just for the park board, true for visual. So from the face of this door out towards the city hall parking sign, about halfway across the road is where the trail would be. Now to the property line, the nearest property line from this face to just about the roundabout is where the nearest property line would be, give or take. But anyway, just to give a visual, just to kind of see how the distance after we adjusted things, after the park board adjusted things, that's how far it moved away from the trail and the property. So yeah, because I'm a visual person, I can understand what you're saying. So that helped me a little bit to say, it is quite a ways.
What about the tranquility that when we're walking around right now today that we enjoy? Having a bunch of campers there is going to change that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue. I do walk that trail a lot, and you walk right next to the campers down the lower side. There's a number of openings there, so I haven't had any really issues with that. But no, absolutely, we appreciate your opinions, and I appreciate seeing so many of you here.
But is there a big financial gain for the city to have the RV campground expanded?
Park board, do you want to speak to that?
Well, it's not a financial gain, but like you said, that the main reason to do it is we've got a waiting list for people that like to come out here and camp.
What about the residents that pay taxes and such that are opposed to it? These probably are
We're taking it all into
non-residents.
consideration.
Pardon?
We're taking this all, and that's why we have these meetings, to listen to what,
Okay.
the first time Charlie thought they were too close, so before he left, we moved the campers down further. So it's not that we're not taking your input and not doing anything with it. We're listening to the input.
No, I would say, so. I'm sorry, Fred, if it's okay if I jump in again. I would say that some discussion is, these improved sites, I can't remember what a seasonal site is now. Is it 1,100, 1,200, 1,000, 900? We haven't decided on what these would cost, but, $1,500, $1,800 to rent a site for a year, each one of those. So when you say financial gain, of course, it would go to the park board for improvements in the park. But there would be some of that there. And I think other discussion that I've had with people around town is that, And here as well is that, yeah, there'd be more families in there, there'll be more people in there. Might be more, the vision is, and especially after listening to concerns, would be that there'd be more seasonal sites up along, so we know who's there. We can control, it's not transient. That's kind of what we're looking at. It wouldn't be transient, it wouldn't be people coming in and out all the time. It would be more than likely seasonal sites up along where the properties are up there. But yeah, no, I think I would go downtown. I'm not gonna, if I camp for a week, I'm not gonna cook at the campground every night. I'm gonna go visit restaurants or lunch or whatever. So coffee shop. So I do think there would be a financial gain downtown. I don't have numbers to prove it. It just kind of, makes sense that it would be in that realm too.
So I do have a question, Brian, on your statement there about the additional 13 sites. It was my understanding originally that these are strictly seasonal sites, that these would not be available just for the weekend. So to your transient comment, none of the spots that we're talking about expanding would be somebody who would be there just for the weekend, right? This would only be people
And
for the season.
that's for the park board, yeah, that you guys decide that. I'm not sure how it was or what it looked at before I came around, but yeah, if that was the vision, absolutely, it's.
That was just how I understood, so I was just looking for clarification if everybody else.
The only thing that I wanted to clarify too is because we keep interchanging permanent and seasonal. And permanent would be like Shades of Sherwood where they have the decks and all of that stuff. So like that is permanent. That is not what we're trying to do here. We're looking at seasonal campers. So from, I guess I don't know what this camping season is, April to October, probably not even that because it'd be too cold for April. But like that's kind of what it is just people are going to bring their campers down for the season, pull them back out too. So they're not going to be there year round. I think that sometimes can get confusing. I just wanted to reiterate that because I knew we talked about that last meeting and I don't know that everybody knows the difference. So I just wanted to make that clear. That was the only thing that I had.
And then further reasoning for looking at the expansion of the campground, this has been in the strategic plan since, it was done in 2000 and updated in 2011. And the 2011 one said, was amended and it said the campground has been upgraded to provide blank number of permanent seasonal sites. And that was a committee of 25 community members, I believe, that put that strategic plan together and the update. So we kind of take the city and the park board and we all take our direction from strategic plan and those plans, which does bring in the overall community as well. So.
But you're taking away from camping sites that could be available for people who want to pitch a tent or whatnot, and you're forcing them down more into a floodplain. That's what's happening also.
Yeah. Fair enough.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I could. In the response, Brian, that you sent, my name is Cindy Arndt, and I sent an email to you, Brian, and in your response, you talked about the campsites being monitored 24/7.
Yep.
Can you expand on that a little bit? So will one of those 13 campsites contain a person that's monitoring the campsite? So there's 12 available then?
Yes, and the park board can speak a little bit more to that. They've got more history behind the camp host than I do. But yes, 24/7, they're there.
So if we would have concerns or something, we would, as a first recourse, go to that person?
Yep.
And then to the police or whatever our concerns may be?
Yep, yeah.
So is this like a paid position, or is it just that they can camp there all summer? So here's what you do to get your campsite. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
We have a camp host down here now, and they camp down there and take care of the like, we'll give them passes to the swimming pool or whatever, but and they can camp down there and take care of the whatever comes up there. And it could be the same, it's just that they would move up to these other sites if they were to do
I
it.
was unaware there was a camp host in the campsite.
Yep,
Yep.
always at 24/7. And if Don and Judy are gone, like on a weekend, they find somebody to,
Where would that be posted so other people would know that?
Well, that's a good point. We could put a sign right there that says camp host. That's a great idea, great point.
when people come in,
There's a sign up by my
there's a sign by your trailer.
Yeah.
With a phone number on it.
You have to walk around the campsites to figure out who the host is and look for the number?
No, it's right in, when you come in the drive.
Oh, when you come in.
He's right, he's the first one when you come in the drive now. And then there's a sign there, that, right?
Yep. Okay.
And to go just a little bit further on that, the police chief pulled all the police calls from down there for me for the last 5 years. And for the campground itself, it was a little hard to pull them all out because the park has one address. And there's a number of calls to that area when it's vacant for people sleeping there. In this area that's being proposed for the campground, people sleep there. They go back in there because there's nobody back there and they do things they shouldn't be doing. And so we get a number of those calls. But for campground calls, most of them are initiated, well, a good share of them are initiated by the camp host, for people not staying there, not paying, not leaving, parking wherever they weren't supposed to, things like that. But about 6 a year, 5 or 6 a year, and most of it is again, initiated by the camp host. I didn't see any names of complainants on there that I recognized. None of the neighbors, I don't believe, were on there. There was a couple of walkers that weren't identified, just walkers, but most of it is that type of stuff.
I have something to say. First of all, I'd like to know why you want to ruin a beautiful, wonderful park in the middle of our city with camper clutter. Second of all, it is in the city limits, am I not correct? Is it not? Okay. Don't trailers belong in certain zones? Trailers, campers, they all got axles. And third, there's a lot of endangered species down there. Has anybody taken this into consideration? Trout lilies, there's burrowing owls out there. Those are endangered. And they're right up where those campers are going. Has anybody thought about this?
That's why we have these meetings.
Exactly.
No.
I think an environmentalist needs to come in there and find out what else is in there. Because that's going to ruin their whole breeding ground.
Fred, don't mean to interrupt. I'm Jesse Preston with WHCast. If I'm not mistaken, the city or the park board is looking at going for the DNR grant for this project. As part of that grant, I believe, and I don't have the grant in front of me, that would be something that will be reviewed during that grant application process. So if they do run into any issues, the DNR at that time would shut that down and wouldn't go forward. What's that?
If they'd let us know about it.
Yep, they would be part of reviewing, the DNR along with the city and other agencies would be part of reviewing to make sure that no endangered species or archaeological issues, anything else for that area.
And if I can speak to the campground and zoning, or that campers need to be, RVs need to be in a certain zone, excuse me. This has been a permitted campground, that whole area for, I don't know how long we've had the permits, but.
Not for permanent camping, though.
Well.
It's been a campground, but not for permanent camping.
Yeah,
Seasonal.
and it'll have to be,
Right, so
re-permitted.
not,
Yeah, it'll have to be
permanent people.
re-permitted. We'll go through the whole permitting process as well, so all that will be looked at.
Again, though, we're talking about seasonal, just for the summer months, not.
and they have to
permanent.
get everything out of there.
Exactly. Yeah, there will
Exactly.
be no permanent decks and that type of stuff built. The trailers, the RVs will leave. Yes, sir.
I'm not a camper, so I don't quite get it. So what you're doing is you're putting sewer hookups and water hookups to every one of those sites, correct? Okay.
And also, being that I am a relative of one of the founding fathers of the Covered Bridge Society, I know this is not what they wanted, for people to be camping all summer long in our park. It was to enjoy the wildlife and the serenity of this beautiful park within our city limits. I don't know if there's any other campground around here that's got a campground in their city limits. And there's only 20 of them within a 50-mile radius. So do we really have to be the only one in the city limits? The first one? You know, I mean, can we not move it out someplace else? If you want that many in there? Shades of Sherwood isn't very far. And where's the money gonna go for? Where's the money that's gonna come in from this gonna go to? And the Parks Board's gonna pay for all this, right? It's not gonna come out of our taxes, not gonna get slipped into something.
Can I adjust?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So of course, from my understanding, this is all part of the grant process. So the park board has been setting aside funds for a number of years for different projects. They've also gotten money from different developments to leave in that. So this expansion itself, no, that will not come out of, they have roughly right now that they have set aside, they have two funds. One's kind of like a savings account and one's like their regular account. And in their, so quote unquote, I call it savings account, they have, excuse me, I'm looking at with glasses here. They have $217,000 available for projects in that account. Within the regular park fund, they have $130,000 and they haven't gotten this year's chunk of taxes. That will go for like the mowing in the park and some of the other things. So, they're not going to be taking money and taxes to fund this expansion. That's not the plan with this whole thing, which is why they're looking at the grant. But they have been preparing for this for a number of years.
You'll have your time.
Just to clarify, Jane.
Okay.
And you were talking about, we got a minute from 1965. I'm just going to read you one statement here. Paul Rockney brought the council up to date on the work being done towards a park and campground in Norville. So
I know, I understand it was a campground. It's on a small scale. It wasn't never meant to take up most of the camp or the park. Yeah, but it's a lot of it. And that's where the prettiest part is. You know, you get the pine trees into the trails. There's a lot of older people that drive out there and get out right there and walk. You know, because they can't walk all that ways, but they like to get out and just sit there. And I'm wondering, how much is that going to keep them from going out and doing that? Because they don't want to go buy them campers and, you know, or even know if they can get by them. Are you going to be able to still drive by back there? Like they used to have, like.
Loop will stay the same, we'll just add onto that loop.
To the other
Yep,
side.
There'll be a place there that they can park.
They said, yeah, this park gets used by thousands of people. Biking and hiking and everything, you know, just out eating a lunch in the sunshine.
Yep.
So it'd be a shame to have it all cluttered up with that many campers, you know. You know, a few of them is one thing, but if you're gonna have an extra 10, plus how many's there now? So you're talking 20 something in there. You know, that's a big difference.
Green space will be gone.
At this time? It doesn't mean much, but my name is Mike, and I'm a Minnesota master naturalist. I've just taken a few courses on it, but I've gotten to hang out with a lot of conservationists around the state. And I've learned about the trout lily, and I've hiked around in the spring and found them and stuff. So it's really great that you're speaking up about this, and it means a lot to me. But
Yeah, well, if I could get my dad to go out there, he could probably find some more that you could, on the endangered list out there, so. But there's.
That I'm on this board too, and I'm sharing that opinion, and I want to protect that. I've been pitching this outdoor rec grant to add to it and get some of the DNR funding and information and teaching so that we can take an RV or a campsite and in between them plant a buffer of native species. and so that your RVs would be covered by tall growth grass and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's kind of like, if I keep on responding to the feeling at this moment, is we're sharing the park and we're managing it to a point where we can have campers, but then we can have a space for that bench. We can have a fire pit, but also we can have grasses growing in a calm, tranquil spot. So it's like this balance of management of what we have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's like the nice, pretty green areas in Zumbrota are getting slim real fast. Just my observation.
All right, thank you. You want to speak?
Yeah.
Dave?
I can walk that far.
Here, you just want to hand the
Here,
mic.
just do this.
David, you can, David.
Maybe I'll stay here, I'm getting old and I get wobbly. I like opinions, I like initial oriented, and that's good. One reaction I get listening so far, I sympathize with the neighbors. You gotta work this together. If it goes through, get a neighborhood association that meets regularly. I wish we had that at the golf course, because houses get hit out there and it would be good to meet regularly. Okay. Something that surprises me is Zumbrota is extremely tolerant of trailers, boats, camper, RVs. Go around town. I know my son Pete, he had a rig parked all summer, next closer to his house than the guy who owned it. Now,
Following their ordinances.
and well, there's ordinances, but here's what I wrote down. I don't know if this is good government, but you're kind of up to you working it out with your neighbor, and that creates tension. And I'm not saying you change it, it's kind of we're tolerant of it, and the city will listen to the complaints, okay? That's where that's at. Now, you can drive around town and take pictures of rigs parked next to homes. They're not in the street, they're in the driveways. And then, just as an argumentative thing, you have ordinances when you build that house. Some might even say color, but not so much, but distance, setbacks. And now you can almost hook up electricity and run that thing as an extra bedroom and have your relatives come. It's not, I don't know if it's good government. You'd have to set up something on the edge of town where people can park these things. And maybe I'm okay with live and let live, okay? So I get the positives and the negative. The one thing that's really positive in my mind, I go down to Lanesboro and we get a lot of Zumbrota merchants that are as interested in Rochester and Red Wing. They run their ads over there. They don't hit us as much. Zumbrota is takes care of the locals, but it also has this thing about expanding out. And maybe they want to copy Lanesboro. Within Lanesboro, there's 2 city-owned units for parking, a little more space than what we're proposing here. And it's within walking distance of downtown. And that's pretty cool. I don't, these guys are friends of mine. I hate to argue against them, but I got to tell you, it's pretty cool to have a campground within walking distance of downtown. And that's from a business perspective, okay?
Time,
Yeah.
Dave.
Thank you. I share with David the problem we get up on walking. And then one complaint, if I can put that on the agenda, is that I would have been really happy if masks had been required at this meeting, because I'm very immune compromised. And I had 2 calls tonight of people who said they couldn't come because of that problem. So I know that's a hot topic, but I resent sort of being excluded because of a health problem. Okay? And the other thing I'd like to say is I sure hope you guys would talk up a little bit, because old ears don't work good anymore. Okay? Now, can I start? No, I'm done whining. Again, just a quick history. I'm well acquainted with the park. I walked at sections of it virtually every day in good weather for 20 years. No, I can't walk that far anymore, so I'm sad about that. But my daily walk was to walk up to the swimming pool, take a right, walk the trail down, come on the lower trail to the city. So I walked that, that was my route. But along the way, you get a little time to think. And I'm appreciative of the park. But I've always been aware of, again, with good friends with park board people in the city, of all the changes and dynamics going on. I followed this quite closely. But I think the one thing that was always apparent is, in my mind, was that there's somewhat of a question, should the city be in the park business, period? Or should camping be private enterprise? I think that's a very basic decision to make. And I think different towns make that decision in different ways. But I think as so often happens, when we get involved in these things, then there's always sort of a creeping kind of government that takes over. Well, we did this one year. I suppose maybe we better continue it on the next year without a full analysis. And so along the way, there have been some things we've said, well, I think originally we'll take care of the buildings that were down there. They got flooded out. Well, we took care. We moved into the fairgrounds. There's always that kind of waffling that goes on. But I think when you get into that, when you start going along, then there are always sort of points we have to stop and say, well, we've come this far. Is it really important to keep on going? Or should we simply say no now? And in my mind, this is a time to say no now. Because what we're doing now is we're making a big jump. It's not kind of a gradual climb. We're taking a leap. We're jumping up. And what we're going to do is take a good piece of land and we're going to cover it up, maybe, with good grass. But more important, we're going to dig all around it and dig all kinds of stuff under it. Now, those developments are irreversible. Very hard. Once you've gone that far, does that mean sure you got to keep going on and on and on? So those are my two major points.
Your time's up.
Okay, I'll quit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, I'm letting other people talk tonight.
Was it? No, Carol, behind you.
My name is Carol Jackson, and I am a resident of Zumbrota, and we are campers. And we've camped out at Shades of Sherwood, and we've camped here in Zumbrota, I would say 6 to 8 years, and we love it down there. It is so peaceful, so quiet. It has just been very nice. And Dean and I, we probably are always the last ones with our fire out, and everybody else is in bed. And we like almost zero drink. I mean, it's just nice and peaceful and enjoyable. And I know putting in more things would also do more revenue for the camp board itself, because there'd be more resident. And it also, we had a business for 30 years in Zumbrota, and I know we get campers. So I presume all the stores get campers. We get them eating, and we get from Shades of Sherwood, we get from down here. So I know that it's revenue downtown. It's a fact. And And now, I know years ago they had some trouble running it, but I know since the people that are in charge of it now, it's just peaceful. It's just a nice, enjoyable, and we've got walkers right by our camper. And the benefit of being up above is it would be, if when we get rainstorms, we wouldn't get pulled out. We've came up quite a few times and pulled our campers out. And 2 o'clock in the morning when it's raining and you got to get all your stuff, can't see anything. And a lot of the camper permanents are, further off, which to get here and get a hold of them is harder than, and I have family too that could pull it out for us. Is there any questions on that?
When you were referring to pulling campers out, was that out Shades of Sherwood or
Pardon?
was that?
No, here.
Oh, that was here, okay.
That was here. No, where we sit now, where it's definitely flood.
Yeah,
zone.
yeah.
Up above, it's not flood.
For sure, and there's
And those permanent ones too, they're just quiet people. I mean, where you'd have the weekend people in would be down below then, I'm sure is what it looks like. And there's walkers been around all the time.
Yep, and the flooding concern, of course, we all know it floods down there. We've seen it. Most of us have been here our whole lives. We know very well where it floods. We have flood indicators now, or water level indicators in Wanamingo, and we have about a 4-hour window now.
Right.
To get things out if need be. If it, at certain levels, then that kicks in the emergency plan and so.
I know for sure 3 times we've pulled out.
Yeah.
Had to.
Yep, and it may or may not flood at that point, but, usually when it gets to that level, we've got adequate time to get everybody out. And if they don't get out, they didn't really want to get out quick enough.
And for us, we don't really walk into town, but I can understand where it's nice to have the trail there for the campers walking. So I know we do walk out the trail and we also walk over to the camp or the cemetery. It's so peaceful and it's really enjoyable.
Are there any improvements that you could list off that you'd look forward to?
Well, I know getting the campers out of the flood zone was a really nice thing. And I know too, the park is trying to put bathrooms up by the building, which is fabulous. I mean, handicapped people can't walk down to that other one.
I just want to be clear. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I just want to be clear that it's still in a flood zone. It's the flood fringe or the flood, it's a 100-year area.
Yeah. It's never, since we've been there, it's never flooded.
Right, but it has. There's pictures, we've got pictures.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
But it's not really flowing water. It's kind of backup water at that point. And the park board has talked extensively about that. So I just want to be clear that I don't want anybody to think that I ever said or anybody ever said it's not in the flood zone.
Yeah, I know it is.
There's different variations.
Probably some roads in the flood zone.
Hard to help people understand all that.
Okay.
I'm Greg Blockstead. I probably have the best view of where the campers are going to be at, and for that reason, I am completely against the expansion down at the park. I can sit out my patio, and I'm really not looking forward to looking at the back end of a bunch of campers down in the park, because right now I have one of the better views of the park itself. So for that reason, I'd like to see it remain the same. Are pets going to be allowed?
Are they allowed now?
Yep. Yeah, and the only reason I ask is just about everybody and their brother has a pet nowadays. And I'm not opposed to animals. I don't have one myself. But I think then we're looking at an addition of someone trying to police that their animals are on a leash. Otherwise, they let them run all over. And I really don't enjoy picking up someone else's poop or walking in it on my own yard, because that happens on a regular basis now. So that's one of my other concerns.
Can I ask one question? So We had a really good suggestion from one of our people in town here who is really into foresting, reforestation, all that stuff. And he suggested a way to work with the homeowners might be to put up a living fence, some sort of bushes or shrubbery along that property line. I thought that was a good suggestion. It might be a good way to work with the homeowners to, to make this happen and be a little more comfortable. I'm just wondering how you feel about that.
So I wouldn't be opposed to it, but on the other hand, I would, for the simple fact then I can no longer see the park. It takes, the view I have of the park currently would be gone. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else, or
No, I'll be last.
well, you might be here. Nobody else is wanting to come up.
Sure.
Nobody else?
One more.
I hear a lot of negative thoughts about adding on, but let's listen to a positive thought once. I spent quite a bit of time down there camping, as most of you know, and I like camping during the week. It's before the tours show up in the weekend. It's peaceful, it's quiet. But I do notice, I used to be a security officer. I do notice some things that raise a red flag for me. Same people almost every day go down to that far corner, visit for only a minute or two with somebody else, and they're gone. Now, I'm pretty sure they're not selling Girl Scout cookies. And, you see it on television every day where a drug deal goes bad and it gets ugly really fast. And if you had campers down there, one thing the drug dealer hates the most is an eyewitness. So they're going to have to find a different place to do business. If things got ugly, it could hurt. Not only, they start shooting. Drug dealers aren't very good aims. They're good at pulling triggers, but not very good at aiming. Innocent people get hurt, even in their homes. So I think putting in the 13 or whatever would make the park safer and also make the neighborhood safer. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other?
Yep, I'm going to speak. My wife is poking me in the side if I get out of hand, but I do have pictures of the floods that occurred in 1998, 2002, 2010. This is the one I really makes me kind of sad, but also chuckle a little bit because somebody didn't pull their RV camper out of the park.
Well, excuse me. I'll talk to you after the 3 minutes.
Yeah. So these are here. I do want them back. But as Brian pointed out, we all know about the flood. The flood has happened. We're probably due in another 6 to 8 years if the past is anything to predict the future. Just to clear up a couple points that have been made tonight, just want to let you know, according to Neil, it could be a safer area, but I saw a group of families taking pictures of their kids down at the end of the park where the proposed campground is going to be because it's so beautiful. And that's going to be gone. As was stated before by a couple other people, that whole area of the park, even though the square footage isn't that significant when you look at the entire park. But that whole area is going to be an RV campground, an RV park. It's going to change the look of the park. It's going to change the feel of the park, that whole area back there. We're going from 5 campers, seasonal campers, to 18. One of the things that I've said a number of times to people is, are we sacrificing the needs of many, not just residents in Zumbrota that use the park as a place to relax, a peaceful way to get away from the chaos that we have right now, for the needs of a few or the wants of a few? 13 more campers. You think about the people that live along that neighbor the proposed campground area. We pay a significant amount of taxes. And now we're talking about 13 people, 13 campers that are come in that area. So we're talking a lot of resources that not just money that we pay in taxes, but time and energy that we put into this community for the wants of a few people to have an RV park. Lay that out.
Time.
The camper that you were concerned about, Charlie, that was flooded there. Larry, you know the history on that gentleman. Question. The camper that you were concerned about that was in there?
I'm not concerned about it. I'm just showing the picture.
Well, I thought you said that really concerns you.
No, I'm not concerned about it at all. I'm showing people how deep that water gets. It's a good visual.
Right. But I'm gonna say this anyway. There was more campers in that park at the time of that flood that got them out of there. This guy was warned 4 hours before so I'm just saying that we do take steps of getting people out of there. It wasn't because, when you show that, it wasn't because we didn't try to get that gentleman to get us out of there, but he had plenty of time.
The purpose of me showing that is to show how deep the water gets. And you still got 5 seasonal campers, 5 seasonal campsites that are going to be in that same area. So don't think that you're going to be moving them out of the floodplain.
Oh, we know that. We know that. We won't be in the,
just to add, because you asked the question, the strategic plan in 1999 specifically states that you want to relocate the majority of sites from the floodway. That's part of the strategic plan in 1999. And there's no mention in 2011 strategic plan of anything, nor any of the recent council minutes of anything relocating the campground, the permanent or seasonal campground for RVs to that location. That only came up in December this year, or last year, December of last year. So the discussion about expanding the campground has been something discussed, but only in December of 2021 did it come up as far as the location. That's what we're opposed to.
I'm curious about the photo, if we can circle back to that, just for my knowledge. Was that camper in the proposed area?
No, it's below the proposed area.
Oh, gotcha.
But I also have pictures of the proposed.
Right, yeah. No, I thought people were already camping up there and up in there, and it got that deep up there, because I was the one who specifically asked for the topographical distances, like specific elevations, because I'm mostly concerned about that too. I grew up, like literally this park has been my backyard for numerous years. We built a house there in '78, and I have seen it flood every single time it floods. And the stuff that is on the south side of the park road can be fast moving water when it really comes through and that flash flood is there. So I can see where, as a camper, which I am not, I could see where that would be dangerous if you have a lot of external stuff and jacks and a rig and all sorts of stuff and you're sleeping or, what have you. That would be dangerous to get out of there. And now it's already soft and soaked and stuff down there. So my primary concern is for the campers, and that anyone who is there, I would much rather see them have nice cement pads, nice crushed rock, nice organized rows where they can pull out once we have that 4-hour window to get out of there. I am with you 100% that safety would be my number one vote for improving, whether it stays where it's at or gets higher elevation. That would be my number one concern, is just for the safety of the people who are visiting our city.
Yeah, I don't argue with that at all.
Yep.
But why does it have to be this location? There was no interest in even looking at multiple options as far as locations. And it seems to me that this decision was made long ago, which concerns me, that you have no other options to put a campground. The people that I talked to that wanted camping, that wanted seasonal campgrounds, they wouldn't mind if it was in another location. We're opposing the location, the proposed location. So we're not saying, and I'm not saying that, you know, I don't want seasonal camping in Zumbrota, just not in that location.
Anyone else?
I have a question. So you're putting in cement
No.
pads? I mean, that these campers are going to be on?
That was my wish, is that if it gets soft and things like that, obviously everything here that's proposed is just crushed rock. And like I said, I'm not a camper myself. I would much rather have a cement driveway than a crushed rock driveway. But this is literally just crushed rock, class 5 or whatever it is, just gravel.
Can I speak a little bit to the location? You know, this has been the permitted campground. That part of the park has been the permitted campground for so many years. It never even crossed my mind that you would expand the campground somewhere other than in the campground. The rest of the park is in my mind, as I've grown up here, that was all park, and the campground was always back here. Now it was said that, yeah, this was more primitive, tent spaces, things like that. Hardly ever used. We used to use it a lot when I was a bat boy for my dad's softball team. But since then, I don't see a whole lot of people there at all. So I think for considering other locations, at least for me, when the park board was talking about this, I'd never even crossed my mind that would go somewhere in the camp or somewhere in the park other than in the campground. So that's just my 2 cents on the location.
And I think to bring up that it was thought enough 4 to 5 years ago that when they put in that new trunk line through the park there, that they actually put a stub up for the sewer to expand that campground there at that time. So on that new line, there's a stub out of that for a expansion. And I think that trunk line was put in 4 or 5 years ago now.
There was also a reforestation plan that was in place 10 years ago to really add some new trees into that area of the park to keep it picnic area. And to have a small playground back in there. That was 10 years ago.
Yes, and the reforestation plan did go forward, and they planted a lot of trees in a lot of places, including in the park. I'm guessing they didn't plant a bunch here because, again, I'd be guessing, but to me, it would make sense to not plant a bunch right here because it's in the middle of where the campground should expand. But again, that's just me guessing, but it would make sense. And that was, you know, I haven't seen a plan. We've got all the minutes. We pulled all the minutes for Charlie earlier today. And read through those. And it does talk about reforestation in the campground or in the park. I think it does say campground as well. But there were a lot of trees put in. Is that correct statement, Mike?
Yeah.
Which, you know, are going to be challenged when you stub in all of the sewer lines and electricity. It's not just the tree trunk, it's going to be the roots that are going to be impacted. So all of those trees that have been planted through the reforestation program could be affected.
It's more of a comment, you know, I did go around to talk to people about this and inform them. And I know that one individual said that, oh, yeah, as a Cub Scout, I went camping back in that area. His group did. So if you take this area and take that away, you're gonna force them down into more of a floodplain, the campers. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem to make sense, I think. You know, the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, when they want to camp, do you really want to put them down into a floodplain, or do they have to go other places? They've got a nice place up there right now to go to. You say it's on the edge of the floodplain. That's a great place to have Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts camp. Is that considered?
Well, we'll have to look at that whole planning and then maybe leave room down at the other end for tents. I think, because there is room down there for tents, so no. This kind of plan.
So the other point I just want to make is that it's not just the neighbors that are vehemently opposing this. There's also a petition being distributed in Zumbrota of other people who don't want to see the park changed to an RV park. And so while they can't be here to speak tonight, I will let you know that they are signing a petition. Would you consider that in your decision making?
Well, we look at it, of course. But I've also talked to a lot of people that think it's a great idea that we're doing.
You have documentation?
No, it's the same as.
No, we have documentation.
Well, right, so then.
And we also have emails of everybody that's emailed Brian Grudem per my request. But I wasn't the only one that distributed those notices to basically send an email to Brian if you oppose the project and copy me. So I have 13 emails that I think you guys have all seen, right?
Yes.
So we have the same number of emails vehemently opposing this as the number of proposed campsites, plus a lot of people that have signed a petition.
So I'm going to add
How many have
on
signed the petition so far?
Pardon me?
How many have signed the petition so far?
I don't know because I just have,
Huh?
I don't know right now because I just have a partial list.
Well, you got partial list now?
I do.
How many are on there?
Well, it's almost a full page.
How many?
And these are all people that don't live as neighbors adjacent to the proposed campsite. I specifically was asking and talking to people who didn't live in adjacent to the proposed campsite. And their primary reason was just like was discussed earlier, that it's going to change the look of the park. And feel.
So I would like to add to Fred's comment, because I was not born and raised in Zumbrota. I was actually born and raised in a very small town in Iowa. I moved here in 2018 with my husband. We're going to start a family. That's kind of our plan. So I didn't know much about the history of Zumbrota, so I took my day off yesterday, and I actually drove to the park. I drove around, checked out where everything was, because I wanted a feel of what everybody else was feeling. I wanted to see what was going on, because I didn't grow up in this area. I've also taken the time out of my time to talk to other residents of Zumbrota as well and ask them how they feel about the campground expanding, just kind of getting a feel of what everybody else is thinking. These are people that do not live near to the campground. Some of them might, I'm not sure. I work with some of them. So I just wanted to get a feel from people who were just neutral to whatever was happening. I've heard nothing but positive comments about the park, the campground being expanded. I've known people that have lived in that area who have commented and said that campground doesn't bother them. I have people that walk on the trails all of the time. They don't notice the campers. So like I'm taking into consideration what everybody is saying, but I'm also, you know, I have a hard time when I only see one side of the issue. So when I go like check my own side of the issue too, you know, I want to see both sides. I want to see what's going to be best for the town. I want to see what's going to be best for my future children. I want to see what's going to make this town a great place to live because I want to spend the rest of my life in this town. So, but yeah, just to add with what Fred had said, I've heard nothing but positive reviews on this.
So I've heard the same thing. I'm not disagreeing with that one bit. But when I talk to those people who want the campground, they agree with the fact that they wouldn't want it behind them. They universally, I sat in the park on Saturday before it started to rain and talked to people as they walked by. And no one opposed the campground. No one opposed permanent or seasonal camping. It was the location. They said that they wouldn't mind it being in another location. Didn't have to be in the park. So that's what we're saying. It's very simple. We're not opposed to camping. We're not opposed to a campground, RV campground. We're opposed to the location, which never was considered before a lot of dollars have been spent. Stub-ins have been made 5 years ago, assuming that that's where it's going to be. So the train is kind of going down the track. And I understand it's hard to pull back once you start going, and you've incurred expenses already. But I wish we would have had this discussion, you know, before this grant opportunity came up. And it was decided in December that this was the only location.
And for the location part about it is, you know, for camping, there's already a campground here. There's the amenities, well, there is a campground here, Charlie.
It's not an RV camping, but it's tent camping. It's different.
Our campground out here is got full of our, no, I'm just talking, there is a campground here. Whether the location and wherever, we're upgrading it. But the reason we didn't look beyond that, because all the amenities for camping is here. We got shuffleboard, we got pickleball, we got a swimming pool, we got disc golf. So the amenities are here for camping too, also. And the park is for all these different activities to go on. So that's why we never looked at a different location.
Can I jump in and ask a question? You keep saying 5, there's only 5 seasonal sites, but there's like 13 campsites for campers.
I'm talking about the seasonal sites. That's what we're comparing it to. The 13.
Sure, I just want to clarify, there's more than 5 campers in the campground at a time.
So there's going to potentially be more than 20 RV campers. Because the weekends, they can pull in more RVs. That whole area, and I wish the city of Zumbrota citizens knew this, that it's going to change the dynamic of that section of the park. It's not going to be the same covered bridge park that it was before, once that happens. And it's going to be an RV campground, not tent camping.
I agree.
Well, my name's Kim Simonson. I actually do work for the city, so I tend to not speak out on these issues. But I go to the park every day. I walk the park. I'm 59. I've lived here 59 years, minus maybe 2. I'm a camper. I don't have an RV. I have a tent. I don't have a problem camping with RVs at a campground. I believe that there would be both tent and RV camping available. One of my biggest things, because I'm a super proponent of it, is I think that the campground and the campground expansion is a huge plus for the bike trail and that proposed expansion to get the bike trail expanded to Red Wing. So that is one of my biggest proponent things and what that can bring to our city. Personally, you can go down there on a holiday weekend. There's a lot of campers. It seems a bit disorganized. Because they can pull in because of the way our sites are. I like the thought of everything very well defined, being able to offer people an opportunity for early check-in, being able to do all these things that we currently can't. But as a person in the park, I walk back there all the time. I'm personally in favor of, because I just wanted to say I don't live by the park, but in respect, I am a resident of Zumbrota. I pay significant taxes to the city of Zumbrota, and I am in favor of the expansion of the campground. I'm really in favor of upgrading the facilities back there, which are old and need to be upgraded. So that's my perspective as a citizen, not anything other than that.
Any other questions? Board?
Can I just speak to the location again? I think I said this before, but I don't think it would have been, correct me if I'm wrong, Park Board, but I'm guessing it never occurred to anybody to move the campground out of the park and put it somewhere else, away from the pool, away from the trails, away from the amenities. So, when you say that, well, it was never even considered, well, I don't know why it would ever cross anybody's mind to take, move the campground out of the park.
Did
It's
you
a
think,
great
ever
spot
think
for a
that there would be
campground.
this much opposition? Did you ever think that there'd be this much opposition? Park Board and you, Brian?
Well, and I'd like to speak to that too. We did not, those of us that are for it, citizens or park board members or employees or whatever we are, we didn't actively go out and solicit emails and things for the campground. The emails, for a large majority, 10, maybe 11 of the emails we received were solicited opposition to the campground. I would say if we went out and solicited emails and comments for it, I can only guess, but from what I've heard around town, I make an effort to go get out quite a bit and be seen and be talked to and I go down to the coffee shop and say, all right, fire questions at me. All the coffee shops, and I'm at games at school, and lots of people ask about this, and I haven't experienced opposition other than solicited opposition mostly so far.
So I need to speak to that too, because he's referring to me. And what I did was to facilitate a method to let Brian Grudem know that you were opposed to it. He requested that emails be sent to him.
I did.
I only put it into a little snippet, and I don't think I brainwashed any of my neighbors' minds. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't think I forced them into responding, which is what I'm hearing you imply.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that these were, all the opposition were requested to oppose the campground. With the exception of, with the exception of a couple, no, I understand you got the petition going, that's, but so far, what we've got.
Just a comment, words are, can really put connotation in. Solicited, no. My husband also went out and informative discussions, and if you choose so, it's really up to the individual. So I think that kind of discussion about solicited responses should just be dropped, because you're just going to create hostility.
No, agreed. It was a bad word. But what I wanted to speak to was the fact that, what we have heard has been requested, let's say that. So when we say that the whole community or most of the community is against this, I have a tough time believing that. But anyway, I don't want to go too far into that.
I truly believe most of the community is totally unaware. That's what I do.
Well, and that's that's a good thing to bring that up.
That's the way it is. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
Sure, no, absolutely, and that's a good thing to bring up as well. We have posted public meetings for Miranda 3 months in the paper. Each time we pushed it out.
Is this a city council decision? The park board decision?
This is a park board decision, but it's.
You don't have to run it through the council?
Oh, something like this, we did run through the council, and Chris can speak to that maybe, but the park board authorized the application by resolution for the DNR.
As I see EDA's interest, I see big interest by city council. We elect those people. It takes courage, things can get personal. It's not always fun. but I'd like to see the city council go on the record.
And we did vote on this. We did vote on sending this to go ahead to the grant approval process.
So you gave them the authority?
We gave them the authority to go ahead and apply for this grant to move forward in the process, yes.
And just one more point of clarification, just so let people know, the money that goes into the park board, that's appropriated to the park board from the city, does include tax dollars. It does include everything.
Oh, absolutely. But I think we need to clarify this, that this is tax dollars that were put in, have been planned for park expansion for a number of years. As such, there would be, from what I'm understanding, with the approval of the grant, there would be no future tax dollars taxed for the building of this particular project going forward.
No, but there'll be appropriations to the park board.
Park board has its own, they are allowed to, their standalone financing, the park board sets its budget, and that comes out of the tax levy through the city.
I understand, but they also have the ability to make a decision without even involving the public of how they spend those dollars.
I think they're involving the public right now.
They are, but they don't have to. They can.
I'm not 100% sure of how their bylaws lay out, to be really truthfully honest.
Isn't that true, Brian?
Well, they have the right to spend the money, hire, fire, and I've got all those bylaws here somewhere, but I think just in being responsible, the park board would typically do, a public meeting on something that's going to impact, well, for instance, neighbors, things like that. Is that a true statement? You were on the board for a while there. I would think that it would be a true statement. I would definitely ask for that.
And for instance, like when they dumped all the money into the pool last year to get it going again, to get the kids back into the pool after having it closed down for a whole year, they came ahead and they told the council what they were doing and the plan and putting that money towards the pool instead of just throwing all that money into the pool, because we all know how much that pool needs. So their goal was to open it and get that amenity open for the people in this town. And they brought that forward to the city, stating how much money they were gonna put into it, knowing that it was gonna be a lot of money. I mean, they don't go and just spend the money and,
No, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. The question that I raise is, I wish we'd have had these meetings before some of those decisions were made. Like the sewer connection, like the fact that you're spending money, $3,800 for a consultant, you're spending money for consulting fees before we all get together and talk about this. That's probably more of a concern to me right now than the campground. It's how this process is being handled.
And again, I would just say that there's opportunity to come to the meetings. And so with that, I don't know when this was put on the priority list, I can't remember. But they do, I think, as good a job as possible to push this stuff out, I don't know how I could get everybody here to come to park board meetings to see what's going on, That's, I think, the biggest problem that way. I think that's normal with a lot of council meetings, a lot of stuff that goes on in the city, that there isn't that much involvement from the public. But it's always available to everybody.
And maybe it's helpful to just describe a little bit the park board. So the park board is made up of citizens who apply to be on the park board when there's an opening. And those applications are reviewed and then sent forward to the council for approval to put somebody on the park board. I lost my train of thought. So that's how the park board functions. And like Kim said, that the park board sets their budget based on a whole lot of things. They do a lot of work. And then when we do the city budgeting every year, a portion of that levy goes to cover the park board budget, or whatever pieces of the park board budget need to be. And I do think that this would make revenue, once we've got everything in there at some point. especially if we get a grant, it'll be paid for, and then it will be a revenue maker for the park board. That's not a driving factor, but, you know, it would be, and maybe alleviate a little bit of the tax levy impact. It could possibly alleviate some of the tax levy we would have to do as a full city for that park board. Not that it will, but it could.
And I just want to make it clear that our email was not solicited by anyone. We researched and looked into things, and so our email was, I mean, we planned on doing it regardless of what any of our neighbors asked us to do. So those are our opinions, even though we may share them with some neighbors. We put that, you know, we didn't do it because someone asked us to.
Yeah, absolutely fair. Thank you for clarifying that. And I apologize that there were some 2 or 3 that, you know, like that. And yours was very thoughtful. I appreciate that. Had some great thoughts in there, so.
And I would appreciate it if, I mean, when you look at the campground rules, when you guys get around, you know, to that you take into consideration some of, because the other rules were just so generic. I mean, it just, the park rules.
Mike and I were talking about that today,
Yeah,
that we're going
so-
to bring that to the park board at some point to redo the rules and
While it's been a nice, peaceful, you know, atmosphere, I mean, the more people you get, you know, I think maybe some more tightening of maybe some of the rules should be considered.
Absolutely.
Just, you want to go up to
The mic.
the mic over here, in this red chair here?
Oh, okay.
we're recording it, so we need to be able to hear.
Yeah, Dave Langley, and just with all due respect, wondering where primitive camping opportunities will be shunted to. You know, I'm certainly a lover of green spaces and, I guess a lover of non-motorized types of recreation, avid cyclist and hiker and so forth. And I do love primitive camping. And though it was suggested that, you know, you could pitch your tent alongside the gravel pad, it's not what I'd be looking for. And so simply wondering where primitive campsites might be, if they are moved from that spot.
Did that suggestion of putting tents next to the gravel pads come from the park board?
You had mentioned that you have no objection to just pitching your tent near an RV site. Am I right? Yes. Yeah. Right. And so there's many flavors to people's interest, but mine in particular probably has to do with more primitive experiences. The solitude of that corner of the park is really quite captivating. And, you know, as I complete bike rides that might involve the trail, coming off the trail and through the park, you know, it's sort of a decompression point, you know, as you come back into sort of the world again after being out on the trail. It's nice to come through that back part of the park and still see the green, the trees, and, you know, as you progress the next 200 yards, well, sure, there's RV sites and whatever, but was it ever considered? This is my first visit to a town board meeting, or park board, but was it considered to simply put all the sites together next to the area where there are already RV sites and gravel pads and whatever, so further toward Highway 58, you know, than that very back corner. Just questions?
No, not really, you know. Just to add to what he just said. Okay.
Oh, I'm done.
I got one statement.
Yeah.
When I was on the park board, that road was the cutoff between Primitive and Campground. And I believe we voted on that. So I believe you have to go back and amend whatever we voted on before you can do that. Now, I was with Mike one day and looking through the minutes, and I didn't find it. But I know we voted on that, leaving that Primitive. In fact, we fought having that bathhouse right there. And I know we voted on it, that's all I can say. I don't remember when it was.
So thank you for hearing my comments.
My question was, is it in the bylaws
In the 90s,
that
early
the road is the
2000s,
cutoff
started
point? And it's not.
Yeah, I've had 7 years. Yep.
I just asked if it's in the bylaws, that the road.
You know, it's been so long, it's been 20 years.
Yeah, so if it was just something that you voted in a meeting.
We voted. Yeah, you know.
So if it was in the bylaws.
And Mike and I
something-
couldn't even find, but
Yeah. If it was
all
in
I know is we voted to leave the Primitive up there. And it wasn't many years later that the Civil War reenactors came in there and camped. And that was quite a deal for that deal. They were back there and they were down by the old jail but I do know that we voted, we took a vote. What it was for, I don't remember. I'm old.
So Primitive camping, again.
Again.
What's that?
He's asking where in the plan is the spots for primitive or
tent camping, right? Yeah.
And
Because
so
I think
that's
primitive
all that's
camping, like you pull into the wilderness, we're not gonna have. But we'll have tent sites.
Well, there was one thing too there, the tents were limited to the amount of time they could stay. I mean, they could come in during the week, but it had to be like a 3-day deal. They couldn't set up permanent tents, let's put it that way.
For your kind of answer, we weren't, our goal was to eliminate tent sites. We were kind of, I don't know how much it's scale, but we, on the end where the loop is.
And so,
And that loop there,
just right here
we
would
were
be
still
the
hoping to
tents.
have.
Down here, where the camping is now, that would remain down there.
This here, but I think Fred's talking up at the top where the loop is, right?
What we just
Yeah. So, like right in
Possibly some
here,
up in here.
So,
in this area. So this is all just sketch. Nothing's permanent, nothing's, so things can still be moved around, but the talks were up here.
Okay.
But it is a good discussion on how to provide, additional tent sites. I'm curious as to how many tenters we get down there.
Donnie, how many tenters do we have, would you estimate?
This year we finally had like 3 or 4, not very many.
So not as much demand for the tent sites.
At a time, you mean 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And then we had tents all year. Yeah, not that we want to eliminate spots for them.
It would be an interesting thrust, from the city of Zumbrota to say, we have this facility and but the thrust maybe is more towards, and I'm not saying things aren't trending largely that way, that people have elaborate RVs and TVs and dishes on top of them and whatever, but it's not everybody's flavor, that's for sure. And, maybe primitive sites are becoming almost unheard of anymore. save for maybe going down to Whitewater State Park or some far-flung place, it might be something of interest if it were promoted as such. Just thoughts.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I think I agree. Those are great thoughts. And what's running through my head is I wonder if there's an opportunity to do some of those actually remote back in that area, the wooded area.
Part of the grant requirement is to get people in touch with the outdoors. So we're kind of at, to earn that money, we have to fill that, to make sure that people are involved with outdoors. We could design that in, or we could change the design and with this opinion, but I know the design doesn't work, but I'm just speaking out loud here. Sorry to not false promising.
Well, and I do know too that generally speaking, when green spaces are lost, you never do recover them again. That's sort of an inexorable thrust, that when things get paved over, when things get gravel pads, it's hard to go back, if not near well impossible. So it's a unique resource back there, and yeah. There you go.
Okay, we have any other comments or anybody else want to share? Otherwise, we're gonna.
Mr. Radke.
One more. Yeah, when he talks about, when you get off full of gravel and stuff, you can't go back anymore. It's kind of an argument for the green space business. But last week, 2 weeks ago in the Minneapolis, big article on, I think Woodbury or one of those towns up there that were taking 7 acres around their city hall. And it was all full of other junk, bad weeds and stuff, and getting the goats in and cleaning it all up. But restoring it to what we might call, way back when it used to be, getting it green again. And named an agency, and I think Green River something or other, that makes their business out of doing that. And so I would say, again, great opportunity for us to get the trailers out of there, get somebody in like that. We do that whole area into wonderful green vegetation, get it done right. And as I quote to, I think, Mike or a lot of other people, green does no harm. Wires, cords, whatever else, does all kinds of harm. You never get rid of it. Oh, good now.
Great River Greening is a great volunteer group. Great River Greening.
Great River Greening.
I have a supervisor training through that and volunteering through them. And I have a contacts through them for the riverbank restoration. So
beautiful.
It is involved with this park board.
Yeah. I don't want to quit quite yet, Fred. I have one distinct park memory. And the walk down there one day, and the ball fields in their present location had all been groomed, new surfacing rolled in, looked pristine. And the next weekend was Covered Bridge weekend, and I walked down there. It was a beautiful afternoon, and they were playing softball where must have been half a dozen girls' teams down there. And so I watched well, and just stunned me as I looked. And here was the first baseman and the second baseman, 2 outfielders. Must have been high school girls, but they were all wearing full leg knee casts. And I thought, what are we doing to girls in girls' sports that here all these teenagers have a leg wrecked up already? And then the next Wednesday or so, I believe it was, I walked down the same park. The flood had come through, and all that dirt and surfacing they had hauled in there was now on its way down to the road, laying in kind of big drifts like you'd mound up hay. And then a week and a half later, when they got dry enough, they came in there with big trucks and hauled it all the way. But the important thing about that is that I know the city council, the park board said, no more ball fields. They're gone. So my idea of this is to say, no more escalation of services, they're done. We're happy with the park the way it is. Thanks for the time to throw it off again.
Thank you. Oh, wait a few minutes, you might have something else here, huh? I said, we'll wait a few minutes, you might have something else come on. Well, if there's any other, we're gonna close this portion of the public comment meeting so we can get on with the rest of our meeting. So if anybody else has anything else to say, you're welcome to stay or whatever. Got some other business we have to take care of, but I don't want to cut anybody short, so.
Thank you, thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys, appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Great email. Very well thought
Don't think that there were any extras or something.
Oh, you had space. I remember when Brother wanted to sell it for, was it 12? He approached us in 2008.
Get out of here. You gonna go?
I got my kids.
Yep, yeah. Thanks, Kim.
We deal with it, and I've lived on the river for 42 years.
Okay, so do we want to discuss this further? I forgot to get going.
I mean, if you want to do an affirmation vote after hearing all the public comments, just to reaffirm your direction to the city administrator to continue with the application, I would entertain that.
Larry, your 3 minutes are up.
We gotta finish this meeting so I can go. Please.
So Brian is asking for, after we've heard these comments and stuff and, kind of some comments out there that we've already made our decision, but he'd like a reaffirmation vote to go forward. I mean, he hasn't submitted the grant yet, but he just wants after this, so.
On the 18th, I promised Joshua I would have him the information if we move forward by the end of this week, which leaves quite a bit of work. And just for park board knowledge, it came up that we need a plan, a floor plan for the bathhouse and an elevation at a minimum. And so I called a friend of mine, I actually took my old job down at Building Safety, who's an architect. And just to say, hey, can you quick draw this up? I would have done it myself if I still had AutoCAD, but I don't have it anymore. And so he's going to draw up a quick floor plan and a quick elevation. I don't know if it's going to cost anything. If it is, it's very little. So we can have that for the grant application if we decide to go forward. But I just think it's important after hearing all the public comments that the park board members have an opportunity to say, yep, you know what, I've heard it. The arguments, we'd like to move forward with this or not. Keeping in mind that, by all means, we should keep working with the neighbors on things. There's a bunch of green space back there, maybe some grasses in that green space, let's, like you said, I was well put about working together on this, so.
Do we have to, for the application, have the firm layout of all of the campsites?
We're gonna submit this one, and then we can
tweak it?
Tweak it as we go, yeah.
And I think, I know we had talked earlier that we weren't going to limit it to 10 sites. So, I mean, like we talked, we don't know exactly how to scale these things are put in here. I think our goal was to have some campsites down on the far end here, in the area here.
So
My personal opinion is I was always under the assumption that we were improving the campground, and the expansion was literally for the current demand of larger RVs, more people who want to spend the entire summer there, things of that nature. And I definitely hear the concerns of the neighborhood there. I specifically, if I lived along there, that would be my biggest concern, is I do not want transient people that are coming and going every other weekend and different things in there. I wouldn't want a whole bunch of overflow of campers. I would like at least to know the 12 people that are going to be my new neighbors, which is something that when you live in any neighborhood in town, you don't get the benefit of being able to choose the 12 people who live up and down your street within 300 yards of you, where I think the value of adding this semi-permanent, which we call our seasonal campground or RV park, whatever this might end up being, I think it's important that that timeshare, that space is maintained and controlled, so that you have some of that. And I think you have a better chance of controlling that if you literally are locked into a seasonal financial commitment, that you're coming in there and it's only going to be that one spot. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have your grandkids there and pop a tent or do something, but I don't think that I would be 100% in favor of putting a dedicated spot way back in the dead end turnaround back there where big campers are going to be moving or doing things or whatever and put tents there. I think it's a beautiful idea that Mr. Langley had about potentially straight south of spot number 2, in between the river and the bike trail, or the bike trail and the gravel pit there, where you live, or the gravel road, where you have that kind of little semi-wooded area, open area. That would be a great primitive spot back there. You can't pitch a big camper. That's a wonderful spot. And it seems like it's kind of evolved, and we started mowing back a little bit further in the year, because that used to be kind of heavy trees all the way up until the campground.
Right, Larry's been working on those.
Yeah, so I for one would like to see the value of just knowing who those 12 tenants are, literally right next door to those people there. And because I think a lot of the people who are going to set up for the entire season are probably returning either community members or people who are coming up from down south who want to be closer to relatives or do something, that they just want a place to call home for the summer. So this is home. This isn't a campground. This isn't an RV park. This is somewhere they can come and they can enjoy, and being a Zumbrota resident for a few months out of the year. And for that reason alone, I would love to see it almost put right in the campground rules. It says everything between, the gravel road and the bike path north, that is literally just for people who want to spend the entire summer there and become a temporary Zumbrota resident. That's just my opinion.
Strictly seasonal camping.
Strictly seasonal camping only. And then if it's left open, you still have the views. Like I definitely concur with Mr. Blocks that if I look up my backyard, I would love to be able to see all the way across and see down into the current campground and things like that. I mean, the other concerns they have with dogs and things, you're going to get that with people walking through the trail anyway. But for me, those temporary residents, those people that you're selling timeshares to, basically, you're selling them a piece of, the park for a few months out of the summer. That would be my opinion.
So which would be, I think that's an awesome recommendation.
Yeah.
Because we have 4 or 5 down here now.
5, right? 5.
5
With Donnie.
permanent with Donnie.
Okay, so you got 5 there with Donnie. We've had 5 on the list, that's 10, so we're almost full already.
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
100% it'll be full. There's no doubt.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But I do
Yep.
like that.
And I like the idea
People
that it
coming
kind
for the season,
Yes.
so they want to come back.
Yes.
Guy coming for the weekend, he doesn't care what.
Right. Yep. And I like the idea that Mr. Flattery had a couple of months back where he talked about, the disorganization of things not facing the right way and things like that. I mean, I got on the park board to make improvements, to make things better, visually, aesthetically, all that stuff. And granted, if I lived right there, this does not improve the appeal of it. But I think it improves the safety. I think it improves the organization, the flow, just the entire thing to make it more pristine as a campground. And granted, this has never been an issue of should Zumbrota get into the camping business. It's always been there. It hasn't been, should we move the campground? It's been, do we want to expand it? Do we want to move across the street where it's a little bit higher elevation, things like that? So I think there's an improvement that I can definitely get behind, but I would love to also improve the area down below. And Neil had talked about maybe making those gravel pads or those sites maybe closer towards the road, or the 3 or 4 or 5 sites you have, lining them up so they all face the same direction. So if you do have to pull out in a hurry, they're there. And then, again, to Mr. Langley's point, maybe designating the spot, from the middle of the existing campground towards the trail, making that all just tent camping only, So something like that could be considered when we rewrite the campground rules.
So we're doing this, WKS is doing this, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so
Jesse
they're doing this to get it into there. So the rest of the winter or whatever, we can have them go out there and see where all that is and lay this all out too for us.
Correct.
So we can get it organized and stuff.
Yep.
And then outhouses where the primitive is that what we would do? So that they're not going up to the bathhouse?
The bathhouse is for the primitive.
Oh,
because-
handle it all?
More people in their campers have
Oh,
bathhouses.
yeah.
And they're gonna have water
That's right.
and all the hookups.
Okay, that's right. Okay, yeah, see why not.
Being primitive, would that mean they just use the woods?
So I think it was even discussed.
When we went camping down there, Pip, did you love the bathhouse down there, nobody?
The existing bathhouse is primitive. trust me.
We went down there for the Girl Scouts, and the Girl Scouts were not in favor of using the
Right.
restroom.
So what I like about that, Troy, and stuff, is that we are taking them, we had these
100%.
reasons, so, and we are showing, we've made many changes already, and
Correct.
just that we're not throwing it in their backyard, and not having it taught it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the visual part, that's what the majority of it is, and
Yeah, I think.
that's what I'm gathering, is just the
90%,
visual,
yeah.
visual.
And with what Mike's been talking about, you've been all along saying you want to do some.
And I like the greenery in between better than
Yes.
putting up like a live fence, because then the live fence is there all year long. You put up arborvitae, you block your view for all winter.
Yeah, it's a lot of maintenance. It's a lot of.
Not only just the camping season, then it's the entire season. It's not,
So, we have $3,000 into what now? It's a grant making.
Oh, yeah. So we, and that was another vote earlier on, was to authorize CETA to do the grant writing. And I think it was actually a not to exceed $4,500 when I look at the contract. I don't know where we're at with it.
If we have a grant written this year, it doesn't apply for next year, just
No, we can run it again next year. If it doesn't pass this year, you can run it again next year.
because we are competing and it's not guaranteed to give us the $100,000.
Correct.
So do we want to spare this year to recollect the design, have a great proposal, I don't want to delay anything we've pushed so far, but with the feedback and everything, do we want to draw it up and take this year to do it?
I think we could still do that if we're thinking
Yeah.
if this is something that we feel that we still want to do, we can still redesign this.
Within a couple weeks.
Well, no.
It doesn't have to be.
This is all it has to be.
It's more the dollars. Yeah. They're looking for.
The plan, the dollars, the
Yeah.
idea and everything all has to be in play to get the grant going. But the final plan and everything doesn't have to be. The only thing they need is the structure for the bathhouse,
Yeah,
correct?
it's more or less it's more or less a concept. And
What's the timeframe on the fund?
How fast, like how quickly do they have to be spent?
Haven't
Like,
even
do we get a
gotten that.
year, 3 years?
Yeah, I knew that at one
Spent on a
point.
certain item.
Yeah, you've got
But like if you wanted to take the
years,
next
I think,
2
or a couple
seasons
years.
then to plan it out.
Something like that, yeah. Of course, Dylan was finishing up her last one, and he's not
How long
here.
do we have until?
Okay,
Fred,
Larry.
what I would appreciate from the park board is you guys come up with some designs or go back, way in the back end there where we're talking, this whole thing gonna be developed, is the work that we're doing back in there now, trying to clean some of that mess up back there. But I'd like you guys to be there, and I can tell you what we're looking at, and you can tell me what you expect. So it makes, you don't have to come in there someday and say, oh, shit, he took all that out or that out. Just come back there and let's look this thing through once, so I get some guidance.
Yeah, take
What to do, because otherwise, it was a mess back, it looked like a tornado, and two of the things, what it was. And we took out 8 or 9 or 11 loads of wood and stuff out of it already, and it needs a lot more, to be addressed. But I need you to stop in and not just let me go at this, I want you to give me what you expect, and I'll tell you what I think, and we come to a resolve on this thing, and I can 3 weeks or if I'm lucky, 4 weeks out there this next summer again and go at this thing.
So how would you like to do that? I mean, just individually get a hold of you and take everybody out there? Or?
Any of you can meet with me or you get some guidance from the rest of you and then just come and call me and I'll meet you out there. We can, what do you expect?
Does anyone know a master gardener or volunteer like that? Does anyone have a friend? Because the Great River Greening, if you're not opposed, they can grid out. They put grids out and they say, put this here and put this there. And then they bring in all the volunteers.
Your park needs a lot.
Yeah.
That distance between where the greenery and all we mow and the trail is a mess, all the way down there. We've been working at it, but the whole thing needs it. I mean, it needs several years of getting this thing back again where it should be, instead of a big, you can't get through this at all.
Yeah. So Mike, if you wanna.
I need to spearhead that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Absolutely.
And you can come back to us or whatever.
And I'm excited to hear that. Let's do that.
I'd like to meet with you down there.
Yeah.
But that would be an aside to this.
Yeah.
Right. But it could be some primitive sites too.
Yeah, for sure.
Back there.
That would be great.
So then going back to the motion, we need the motion for the city administrator to proceed with the grant application. And I'll make that.
Sorry, Mike was gonna throw something else in there before you were gonna vote.
Now we're just joking around. I just wanted a park board commitment mission statement that we want green space as part of our design. We want paved gravel spots, it's a management of shared space, but like, do you guys agree with me that we could promote that design? And should we commit to it in our park board mission statement somehow?
Yes, and I agree with whoever Fred or Mary said it, that was separate than the campground discussion, but 100% support that, Mike, for sure.
I agree too.
I would love to get in and clean up some of the stuff that's dead and out of control and the thistles and things that grow way too close to the bike path and just to beautify the whole entire thing for everyone.
Yes.
Specifically from the trail outward, start there in proximity wise, move out back towards that thing. Yep.
And sustainable, low maintenance, sustainable.
Yeah,
That's what,
correct.
yeah.
You got a grant for upgrading fishing?
There you go, yeah.
That way they have it. The guy from the soil and water, what's his name?
Bo?
Yeah, he wasn't too happy with the mowing along the river. Maybe you heard about that.
Oh, we heard about that.
But anyway.
But that's where the green space will come in, with the restoration of the green space.
Yep, no, I know.
Right.
Yes, we were well aware of that one.
With what Jane was saying, the habitat for the stuff, that's important to us.
Correct.
We're not just gonna eliminate that.
Do we have this is aside, do we have a mission statement?
We are stewards of parkland. That's kind of where Aaron gave me my mission statement. You guys remember Aaron? He was here tonight.
Yeah.
What was it?
We are stewards of the parkland.
Stewards of the parkland. No, that's great.
Okay,
That sounds like we.
that's what we'll go with.
Right.
I think
We like plants.
Can we just add that at
Okay.
the end?
All right.
And
We
we
got
like
a
plants.
motion on the floor.
For the city administrator to proceed with grant application.
And can I just add, after hearing public comments or something, how do you want to word that? Just
Oh, okay,
because we already took the vote before.
okay.
Correct.
Motion to continue the application process after our public meetings or something like that.
After,
Miranda can reword it, make it sound.
proceed with grant application after consideration from the public. And that our final decision will be based on input heard. Okay.
Okay. Troy seconded.
Troy seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
You need to gavel Larry again.
Huh? Larry, you're 6 minutes.
No, I appreciate that. I think it's important to, after hearing everything, to make sure that you are all still on board. I take direction from you I was telling Fred that I was looking at the organizational chart the other day, and it's, the mayor and the council, and then me, and then the board's all, so I work for you. So you give me direction.
Well, and I
and
think,
that's-
I just hope it don't come out that, well, they voted, they listened to us, but they went ahead with it anyway, but I hope I can get out to that. We did listen to them, like, we're taking it all in consideration.
We're volunteers and they could have volunteered as well. I mean, I really value their opinions.
Well, and Mary brought up a good point, talking about you want to see campers in the park. I mean, I've gone to a lot of national parks and state parks, and there's camping in these parks. Yeah. And still a lot of green space. Yeah. And it's for everybody.
It's very hard to move a campground from the campground.
Right.
You have
I mean,
not only the amenities that you have there, but your infrastructure is right there.
It's the most economical place to put one, and you're putting it in a better spot, because you're getting it out of the floodway.
Gonna go to look to move it somewhere else, that's cost prohibitive. There's no way that we could afford to buy land and then do this, so.
Well, to me, it's more the proximity. I mean, right here, you're by the trails, the pool is gonna be a big draw to that campground.
Yeah.
All the amenities in the park that you guys have put in recently and looking to expand, and I think.
And, in the future with some of the comments, trail and some of the comments, and I understand the neighbors, it's not, but for sure, some of the comments too, that we're gonna take most of the park and make it a campground.
I mean, the town that I worked in, where I was a lifeguard at the pool, it's right next to a campground. And every weekend, whenever we had campers, the pool was full, every weekend. And that's money that's coming in, so like, I'm kind of looking at it at that standpoint too, is like, if we have more people coming in to see the beauty of this town and the, the uniqueness of the covered bridge, which, nobody has that. So we're bringing people in, and then we have this wonderful downtown that people can go stroll and shop and eat and, so that's kind of my perspective, is like, I grew up in a similar situation. It was actually more outside of town. It wasn't even in town. So people that were camping would have to drive into town to get things, but like, just having the pool right next to that is like, we made so much money on the weekends that we had campers.
Well,
Like
Dave pointed out, it's just within walking distance and
Right.
stuff,
Yeah, it's kind of unique, really.
Yeah.
It's like Lanesboro, and they they're half of them go to downtown wants to be in Lanesboro.
Yeah.
It doesn't do me any good.
Right.
They want media from Riverling and Rochester.
Yep.
But, it all helps,
Yep, it does.
And I appreciate that as a park board, you did listen and you did make changes and you're still listening and
we're still
wanting to work with the neighbors. It was not necessarily reciprocated, that working together to do this. It seemed to be an all or nothing, but the fact that you stayed with, well, we're gonna work with you and we're gonna, I appreciate that. And then this is kind of an aside, but taxes were brought up. And so I think it bears mentioning that, yes, those citizens pay taxes. They're citizens of Zimbrota. That, we value them completely. But when you look at the tax revenue, from the taxes that they pay, homeowners taxes, in all likelihood, these seasonal rents will be more than the city portion of taxes that those homes pay. Not that has any bearing, but that's where I say it has the potential to help us to lower the levy a little bit, which will affect everybody and help everybody. Not that it's going to happen, but if we can get $1,800 per lot, which is way less than Shades of Sherwood, I think that is a revenue for the park board, and I think that does reflect on the levy that you're going to need coming back from taxpayer dollars. So anyway, just there's my
portion of green space, but the money that comes from it, you guys will be able to do a lot throughout the years with that.
Right.
Income to improve the rest of the areas throughout Zimbrota.
I don't think, at least for me personally, being on the park board, that the financial aspect is even a consideration for me. For me, literally, this has been my backyard for decades. I grew up, my property is literally borders up against the shelter that's up there right there. So this is very near and dear to me, but I completely echo the sentiment that Neil Flatroot had, that little space, that dead-end, quiet gravel cul-de-sac that's in the back of the park has always been your danger zone for the people you don't want to see in town. And the reason why they go there is because it's proximity wise, very close to downtown, but completely out of sight. So if anything, the neighborhood improvement, I completely agree with Neil that by having some new residents right there, you're going to discourage any of that traffic that you have back there. And it's only going to beautify and improve the whole area rather than a couple old teenage cars sitting back there. You got some nice high dollar RVs that happen to be there. So, I mean, for me, I think if I thought for a second we weren't improving the campground portion of our beautiful park that I've called my backyard, I would be totally against it. But I don't think we're doing that at all. One question that I had for Brian is, so I moved out there in '78 when the park was, still young, but the neighborhood was brand new. We were one of the first houses out there. And I asked him recently, when did these neighbors that are in the most closest proximity to this background, when did that expansion happen? And I look back and in earliest like house building, it's like all those homes were built in like the early 90s or something back there. So that dead end cul-de-sac that's back there that goes back in towards a very scenic cemetery was intruded on by 8 new houses. Did anybody get to vote on that? Like, wow, these brand new houses are backing up against a beautiful park. We're eliminating some woodlands and some green space and some natural endangered species that are here versus a paved cul-de-sac with 8 new taxpayers. Is this just a financial reason we added 8 new houses back there? So I doubt that was ever considered. But I really truly believe we listened to some of their considerations. And honestly, if this was my backyard, I would probably be opposed to it as well, but I would be open to the addition because it does improve the existing campground. We obviously can't move it.
You were saying you're opposed to somebody staying there for a week, are you? Does it have to be seasonal? Because I wouldn't fear either one of them.
Right.
I mean, there's some people that get a week's vacation. This would be a wonderful spot to spend a week.
And I agree with that.
They would still have that down below.
Right. And I think you still have that where the existing campground is. If I were one of those neighbors, I think I would feel more comfortable if I knew someone who was going to invest over $1,000 to spend the whole entire summer in my backyard. I would feel much more comfortable because I know you on a first name basis. It's like, oh, Dave is moving in for the summer next door versus, I don't know, Larry was just there for the weekend type kind of thing.
Well, it's all right. You're kind of, don't get too carried away. These guys are loaded for bear.
Yes.
You see what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, if I'm retired now, summer here is fine, but I would think I'd like to come maybe for a week if I was working. Maybe bring some of my neighbors and come on here.
Yep.
There would still be spots for that.
I don't know about RVs though.
Yep. Right, yep.
Down below.
That's down below.
5 spots.
The existing campground would still handle that.
Are you protecting yourself from homeless people? Is there a fee for tenders?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what Brian was saying, on most of the calls that the cops have gone out there for are from the camp host saying some of these tenters are there their second night and haven't paid, so they pay up. So
I don't go to Valley San Francisco, go to Golden Gate Park, and all kinds of people run the gamut. You go in the park, you go in the restroom, there's a guy in there, he's got a jar. He's using the soap from the public dispenser. He's made his own little washing machine. And I kind of complimented the guy, but he was doing his underwear.
all right, well, we're gonna, and this is not my fault that it's there. Okay, we're gonna move on to, the priority list. I don't know if there's really any updates.
Thanks, Dave. See ya.
Thanks, Larry. Sorry, I had a gap there.
Twice.
We'll see ya. Yep. Yeah, we're just waiting for the weather on the shower, or the bathrooms up at the shelter.
So I did have one point of comment with that. I think the snow fence is down. I don't know, Mike is gone now, but
Larry's here.
the snow fence that's going around some of the stuff that's been trenched in for the new bathroom and stuff, you want to just double check on that, make sure it gets up
Okay, you bet, you bet.
Mike had commented to me that he was worried that was down and maybe some dogs might run in because some of that stuff that Schumacher trenched in is still open. So double check the fence if you could.
Okay, appreciate it,
I don't
Larry.
want my horses getting out.
Anything that's subject, you may or send you to, you got my number, call me and, you know, tell me what you have in your meeting, but I can help you with stuff.
Yeah, you got something like that?
Yeah, just
Get his number, he's good about calling.
I got Becky's number. If I want you to do something, I'll get hold of somebody.
There you go.
Okay.
Good night.
All right, anything else on the Miranda brought this up with new business, election of officials.
We gotta do that every year, guys.
We're supposed to do that every year.
Oh,
I don't know, that might be a little sore subject right now.
Well, you just take nominations for the different positions.
I nominate Chris.
For all of them?
For what?
Let me find the bylaws again here. I gotta figure out what your positions are.
President, vice president,
Treasurer.
secretary slash treasurer.
So everybody gets the spot.
So everybody gets a spot. So volunteer which one.
You're the secretary, right?
I believe
Yeah, but we
in the
still-
bylaw, but I believe in the
Yeah.
bylaws, it does
We
say
still
that you
have
can
that.
appoint me to officially be, because technically, the treasurer slash secretary should be taking the minutes.
Yeah, this treasurer ain't taking
Maybe
minutes.
change that. Need a secretary through.
Well, yeah, that can be delegated, that, because that's me for the,
Well,
for
right,
the council too, but.
But I believe it says
Kim
that it
and
can
Ed.
delegate it to Brian for sure, maybe me, I don't know, he can. tell
Okay,
us.
if he's nominating me, I'm gonna nominate him.
Oh, the president?
Oh, yeah, president, right?
I had you for all of them.
For all.
So I can, what do they call it? Word? I can,
You can't
You can
abstain.
decline.
I can decline,
No.
that's the word, decline.
If it isn't broke, we don't need to fix it. You're doing a swell job, Mr. Rash.
But there's some that are off, aren't there, that, like the vice, who was it last year?
Mike.
Mike was vice?
Yep.
Okay, we keep that then, and then,
And then I think Mary.
I was treasurer.
Yep.
So should we just do the same slate?
Don't look at me.
sure,
Don't look at me.
we don't have, there's no.
I'm all right with chilling where I'm at.
Yep.
Okay,
I'm
so
still
we
getting
can
my feet wet.
entertain a motion to keep the officials the same as the past year.
I'll make a motion to keep everything the same.
I will second.
Okay, we got a second. We got
Honestly,
a
this works well.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So now, Miranda, do we know who, or what the
Who's going off?
terms are and stuff, or who?
Yes,
We don't, let's not worry about that.
but I'm not connected
You
to
look it
the
up for next-
network.
you
Well,
look
I
it up for
have
next-
it, I just can't get it.
It's 8 o'clock
in the
already.
network, so, yeah, I can have that for next.
Yeah, we'll do that. And then there's a plan in here, but you said Mike was gonna take care of that, and I see he had left. Is that something?
So
Are you,
we're looking at all of our emergency preparedness plans where they're really out of dated as far as, first thing we're updating is names and phone numbers. We have some really old, on the city one, we have a really old sheriff that nobody remembers on there, that we gotta switch. But for the park board one, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't reviewed this one.
so is this something we can, has to be done here right away, or is this something we can look at this month and do it next month?
Yeah, I don't think there's any hurry to do it. It's a long process to redo it completely, but at least you get a month to review it, take a look at it, come back with any questions.
The only note I would have is, and it's feedback from the citizens that were here tonight, is to ensure that Donnie's phone number is listed somewhere down in there, so I don't know. I think that's kind of in here, but just to make sure that it's easy to find, easy accessible, right on the side of his camper, right on the side of any new sign that we put down in there with state regulations.
is probably the best place for it.
Yep, just plastered out there, so it's very easy to find that.
The signage is
Pretty old and worn out down there and not very guiding, I guess.
Correct.
So the signage could definitely use a facelift in my opinion.
Maybe part of the plan with the upgraded.
Maybe it wouldn't hurt in the next month or so if we pull up some campgrounds just to get an idea of what their rules and stuff are, so we can upgrade our rules and stuff. and see
Yeah.
what other campgrounds
You might want to put that on the next month's agenda is review the campground rules, because really what you've got are park rules that kind of all encompass.
And maybe they have, through the league or whatever, got some guidelines that they want us to, that we can go by.
Good look at Lanesboro too.
Yeah.
And see specifically what they have.
Is it comparing to a line like Frontenac or Nerstrand?
What's that?
Frontenac or Nerstrand, are those too strict?
I think more the merrier, you know, pull them out, you guys can
We can compile from.
intertwine, do what works for you.
I just want to say one thing for the night. On Donnie's cell phone, I think that's his personal cell phone. I had stopped and talked to him this summer. And I don't know if we should maybe reimburse him or give him a city cell phone or something.
I think there was talks of that, right?
There was, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the only thing that he had brought up, he didn't care. But I'm like, really, I mean, for a city business, should you really be using your personal cell phone? And I told him I was gonna bring that up, and I think Brian and I talked about it last summer, and then, I mean,
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, he has given me.
Permission to give it out, but I'm
I mean,
very,
for a
very
personal cell phone,
sparing
in
with
this
who I give it
winter time,
to.
We wanna do with some Yahoo that camped here last summer.
Yeah.
And I know it wasn't an issue to him, I just don't think it's fair
Well,
that.
And if there's a dedicated number for the host, then when he goes away for a weekend, he can leave the phone with whoever's covering
And
for
not
him.
calling that person. or
Exactly.
whatever.
In all honesty, people call City
Hall, and I honestly, most of the time, don't really have the answers that they're looking
And I
for
think
because I'm not there, so I don't know.
And I think part of the ultimate goal is to have a whole system, so Donnie can see who's checking in, Miranda can see who's checking in, and
Yeah.
it's all intertwined in the
Yeah, we
same
talked
system.
about,
With like Donnie having a tablet or like something accessible to do that. And relay everything with everybody. So everybody's on the same.
I did. This old man bladder.
A lot. And then potentially working with even the phone company to see if you can get a 732 number that forwards directly right in, so it really drives home that hometown feel.
Yeah.
They can forward it right to whatever dedicated number we have and just permanently transfer it there.
I like that idea.
Yes, that's it.
but I
A
also.
really easy number to, one of the guys might have.
Well, and then it kind of makes me wonder if we could piggyback off of something with the pool as far as like a hardwired phone line went. Because the pool has a phone that we shut off every year.
Yeah, we just have the phone company run one down there.
Right.
Because I do know Donnie, like Miranda had said, most people are calling the city hall, she can't get the answer, so she's gotta call Donnie or give Donnie.
Right.
It's just too many
It's a lot of phone
middleman out
tag,
there.
it's a lot of phone tag
It's annoying to the people.
Which actually running telephone and cable probably would be a great idea for that campground anyway. Most of the time, you don't always get those in campgrounds that might be out on their own someplace.
That's true.
Yep, if you got a hookup there, I mean, for a season, I'd be talking about the seasonal sites
Correct.
specifically. I think it would be it'd be too hard on the ones that you're swapping out every weekend, who's paying, unless you're gonna charge more for the campsites.
Well, no, and one of the considerations in the previous meeting too is that there would be meters at each one of the seasonal ones. There's an electrical bill are going directly to the person who's renting that site. So to have something stubbed in there for that, that might be something else that they could literally call Charter or have it turned on.
Nat, I don't know if Mike has mentioned this in a public meeting forum. I know he mentioned it to me, Tom Meyer, that used to work for Excel. He just had mentioned to Mike that the cost for metering those, like the initial setup to put the meters and stuff, can get kind of spendy. So he had suggested kind of like a co-op billing. So he had suggested before we get really into something like that, to reach out to Excel and see what they recommend, because he said it is pretty costly to get that set up.
I just know that it was mentioned, that's why I was bringing it up,
Sure,
the
yes,
cable thing.
definitely.
I think Mike brought that up to me in between this meeting and the one before, so.
Sure.
Okay. Summer staffing. Brian, you got something on that?
I guess what I would say is that if we're gonna hire a summer employee, we should probably start looking pretty quick here, get a job description done. On that, I know we talked about that, I haven't done anything with that.
Part-time employee that we're.
Yeah, part-time seasonal person,
Designated to the
yeah,
park.
that you guys had talked about.
We had talked about that a couple times.
And I don't remember if that's been approved or,
Yeah,
well,
I think we're
I
still
think
just all discussion on
we
it.
need a job description and a salary, probably, how much it's gonna pay. And we have a little bit of legwork to do on that, so that's, Kim and I and Mike need to do some legwork on that and bring something back to you.
Okay. Lifeguard advertisement.
I saw Pine Island in the paper.
Yeah, I would
Just like official permission to start advertising in the paper for lifeguards.
I would definitely make a motion to go ahead and approve for lifeguard advertising.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second to advertise for lifeguards, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Well, we zipped right through that, didn't we?
Yeah, one more thing, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, we already approved the agenda, so. Well, I would entertain a motion to adjourn then, I guess.
I'll second.
Okay.
Motion second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Oh.
So Mike, I would highly